Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're going to unpack one of the most fundamental everyday things you interact with, which also happens to be one of the most deeply misunderstood. We are talking about money. Now, it's so easy to look at a dollar bill or just a number sitting in your banking app and kind of think of it as some sort of unchangeable magic. But the truth is, money is not magical at all. It's an evolving technology. It is a tool that humans specifically designed to solve very practical problems as our communities grew and our trade networks expanded. And as we're going to see today, the story of money is really just the story of human trust. To prove that money is simply an agreed-upon medium of exchange, consider this absolutely incredible piece of history. During World War II, in German prisoner of war camps, cigarettes just spontaneously became currency. And we're talking even among the prisoners who didn't smoke. Why? Well, because they were portable, you could easily divide them up by trading, say, half a cigarette, and most importantly, everyone in the camp agreed on their underlying value. This wasn't planned by some government. It was a spontaneous economic solution appearing under extreme conditions. It literally shows us that money is whatever we collectively agree it is. So here is our roadmap for the explainer. We'll start with tangible value, then look at standardizing value, move on to a promise on paper, explore trust without gold, and finally end up in the digital money era. All right, Chapter 1, Tangible Value, Commodity Money. Before abstract concepts of finance even existed, people realized they needed something drastically better than the simple barter system. And the solution they discovered independently, across cultures all over the globe, by the way, was commodity money. This is basically a form of currency where the value comes directly from the material itself, or its practical usefulness. It had real, tangible value that you could literally hold in your hand. This completely solved the massive headache of the barter system, where you had to cross your fingers and hope the person who had what you wanted also happened to want exactly what you were trading. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer astonishing variety of objects that actually served as this commodity money. Take ancient Rome. Salt was so highly valued that soldiers were sometimes paid in it. In fact, the Latin word for this salt payment, salarium, is the literal origin of our modern word salary. Across Africa and Asia, cowrie shells were used for over 4,000 years just because they were durable and incredibly hard to counterfeit. Native American nations used wampum clamshell beads. And among the Aztec and Maya, chocolate was so prized that cacao beans were currency. If you wanted to buy a turkey, it would set you back exactly 100 cacao beans. But eventually, of course, precious metals like gold and silver dominated worldwide purely because they were highly portable, rare, and durable. Which brings us to Chapter 2, Standardizing Value, Minted Coins. But, commodity money had a pretty major bottleneck. If you were trading in gold or silver, you had to physically weigh those lumps of metal for every single transaction just to verify their authenticity. To fix this, right around 600 BCE in the kingdom of Lydia, which is in present-day Turkey, we see a massive technological breakthrough. The invention of minted coins. Suddenly, you didn't need a scale to buy something. You could just hand over a coin, totally confident that its weight and purity were guaranteed by the government. This simple act of standardization allowed trade routes to expand dramatically across the Greek, Roman, and Chinese empires. But, of course, standardizing value introduced a brand new vulnerability. Governments quickly figured out that they could stretch their treasuries by manipulating the currency. They'd take pure coins and debase them, basically mixing in cheaper metals while demanding the public still accept them at the exact same face value. Roman emperors did this repeatedly. This early form of currency manipulation is a classic precursor to inflation and economic instability. And honestly, it's exactly why people eventually started demanding better, much more reliable guarantees for the value of their money. Let's move to Chapter 3 and see how this builds. A promise on paper. Because even with standardized coins, lugging chests of heavy metal across thousands of miles of trade routes, that was incredibly dangerous and highly inefficient. The economy desperately needed a lighter solution. So over 1,000 years ago, China actually invented paper money. During the Tang Dynasty, they developed what was brilliantly called flying money. These were essentially certificates that a merchant could deposit in one city and then safely redeem in another. By the Song Dynasty, they had the world's first true paper banknotes. When this concept eventually made its way to Europe, it functioned primarily as a receipt. You deposit your heavy gold coins with a bank, and they handed you a piece of paper promising to return that exact gold on demand. Because anyone could redeem that paper for physical gold, the paper itself became the money. This was the true birth of gold-backed currency. And that leads us to a massive pivot. Chapter 4, Trust Without Gold, Fiat. For centuries, most major global currencies ran on that gold-backed system. But in the 20th century, we underwent a monumental, highly abstract shift that fundamentally redefined what money even is. We moved to fiat money. The word fiat literally comes from Latin, meaning let it be done or by decree. Fiat money has value solely because a government declares it to be legal tender and crucially because the public trusts it. There is absolutely no gold or silver vault backing it up anymore. For the United States, this transition became absolute in 1971 when President Nixon officially ended the direct conversion of US dollars into gold. This can honestly be a kind of tough concept to wrap your head around, so let's try a quick experiment. The next time you have a physical dollar bill in your hands, look really closely at the text. Right at the top, it says Federal Reserve Note. And down at the bottom, it states, this note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. Nowhere on that paper does it promise to give you a fraction of an ounce of gold. It is quite literally a piece of paper backed entirely by trust. So the crucial point is really understanding the three pillars holding up this fiat value. First, the government simply decrees it must be accepted for debts. Second, you and I trust it. We happily accept it for our labor because we are supremely confident the grocery store is going to accept it for our food. Third, the central bank, like the Federal Reserve, actively manages the supply to keep the whole economy stable. And yeah, while it might sound kind of fragile to rely just on trust, remember that this trust is backed by the world's largest economy, a formidable military, and over 2 centuries of rock-solid institutional stability. It's actually a remarkably solid foundation. Which brings us to our final stop, Chapter 5, the Digital Money Era. And this brilliantly illustrates how the evolution absolutely does not stop with paper. We have now fully entered a new paradigm, where the physical bills we just analyzed are no longer how the vast majority of money exists. Most money in circulation today is entirely digital. When a paycheck hits your bank account via direct deposit, no armored truck is driving your physical cash across town. It's just numbers changing in a computer system. Digital currency today ranges from those standard bank account balances to decentralized cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, which rely on complex cryptography rather than governments, all the way to the new central bank digital currencies that nations are currently developing. Literally, every time you tap your phone to pay for a coffee, you are simply shifting digital records. Because, the evolution of money didn't just happen overnight. It unfolded over millennia as humans continually solved the very real, practical frictions of trade. From cowrie shells and heavy Lydian coins, right up to paper receipts and tap-to-pay apps on our phones, every single transaction you make is actively participating in the latest chapter of this ancient story of trust. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. As physical cash continues to disappear and our trust becomes entirely digital, how will humanity solve the next great economic problem? What will the next stage of money actually look like? Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.